T-minus 1 hour, 20 minutes until week 9 kicks off. It's the Tennessee Titans versus our very own Brian's Pittsburgh Steelers. This is your Thursday night pregame show. This is the Dynasty Gambit.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is good? What is good? Welcome into the Dynasty Gambit. I am your host, Gator Jay. As always, you can find me at FantasyJ77 on Twitter. With me tonight, yet again, my faithful co-host, Steven at Target Shares over there on Twitter. And the man of the hour, let's all bow, Pittsburgh Steeler homer himself at FandyGrad92. Mr. Brian, how are you tonight, sir?
Oh, man, just ready for another win for my beloved Steelers.
I hear you. You're that confident. It's just you just chalk the W right on up.
I feel good. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to have 3 touchdowns, so we'll go with that.
Just going out on a limb.
So you're already talking about the Chrome Dome. We're taking the under on three touchdowns for D-Hop. Just go ahead and chalk that one up. All right, Steven, how are you tonight?
Pretty good. Had a good week too. Got a win in my home league that I didn't really deserve because of Sam Laporta. Thank you, Sam Laporta, on Monday Night Football. But yeah, doing well.
Well, we're going to concentrate more and more on these Thursday night games. So let's dive right into this week or this past week. Real quickly, let's talk about stock up, stock down. Steven, who was your stock up last week?
For me, it's CeeDee Lamb. Sort of been like a mini disappointment on the season a little bit. And then so you had a small buy window, and now it's pretty much completely slam shut. He had 12 receptions, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Rams last week. He looks really good in the ESPN receiver tracking metrics that I really like. He's the 3rd overall rated wide receiver this season. Looks great there. He's just behind AJ Brown and Brandon Ayuk. And honestly, credit to Dak too. I thought he looked really good in week 8. Some of his ball placement looked really fantastic. So CD's looking good. Dak's looking pretty good. And then that fantasy playoff schedule, Bills, Dolphins, Lions, shootout, potentially. So yeah, CeeDee Lamb is the stock up player.
Yeah, I CeeDee Lamb, there was that short buy window. And like you said, I think it is slam closed. But I think there's also a potential buy window for his teammate right now in Brandon Cooks. Yeah,
what's 2 straight games with a touchdown, right?
Yeah.
Do you think he's cooked? Is Brandon Cooks cooked, or is he looking all right?
No, I think he's looking perfectly fine. I mean, as a true number 2 to a true alpha. I mean, you look, Brandon Cooks when D-Hop was in Houston, they looked pretty good.
Yeah,
as a pairing. I mean, they had Deshaun Watson previous life, good quarterback. Not so much anymore in there in Cleveland. Brian, who is your stock up this week?
Well, first of all, I'm going to go back to I had a good week. I was 7-2. And this player is not my stock up, but he could be. Trey McBride. He deserves a big shout out. I was able to pick him up in several of my leagues ahead of last week's games. He looked amazing. So he would be a potential stock up. My stock up for the week did just a little bit better. Jahmyr Gibbs. He's on a bye right now, but I believe it's 37 carries for over 200 yards over the last 2 weeks and his first 2 NFL touchdowns. But he also added 14 receptions across those 2 games too. So nice. He's stuck way up. And although Montgomery's been out, Gibbs will continue to have a role when he comes back. So be interesting to see how they split the backfield, but he'll still have a big role. So.
I think one of the interesting thing is like you brought up, the last 2 weeks, him getting those 12 receptions, but he got 15 targets. And that was the coach speak at the offseason was this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to use him. And they, outside of week 2, when they played Seattle, they hadn't used him that way. Understanding he had the two weeks of the, not playing with the injury or whatever. And then of course, Monty just going and being Monty. But I think using him like that, like they said they were going to, and him being able to excel and not feel the pressure coming right behind him. I think that was a huge, huge relief, and everybody got to see what he can actually do going into this next few weeks. Monty may still not be there next week.
Yeah, and they also had a trade before the trade deadline and got Donovan Peoples-Jones to add to their receiver background. So
you mean the guy that we all think is what Jamison Williams could be? So
yeah,
they got two Jamison Williams. Okay, I got it.
Actually, I do. I'm curious. Do you think he takes away something from Jamison Williams, or is it more just like we want two wide receivers who can play on the outside?
They didn't trade for him and bring him over there to put him and Jamison Williams on the field with Amon-Ra. They didn't do that.
Yeah. Oh man,
that's that is what it is, I guess. Steven, who's your stock down this week?
It's Miles Sanders. I'm actually. So I wrote about it in one of my articles a couple weeks back. Like, I don't think this coaching staff wakes up one day and just decides we should play Chuba Hubbard, even though he's clearly outplayed Miles Sanders all season. Well, they finally did. They got a new offensive play caller, and then they made the choice. Chuba Hubbard dominated the touches this week over Miles Sanders, and he's just been so much better. I really like the next-gen stats. The rushing guards over expected, their success rate. Chuba Hubbard's been one of the better players in the league this season by those metrics, and Miles Sanders has been arguably the worst. So a rational coaching decision, you really love to see it. But yeah, Miles Sanders is just droppable in redraft leagues at this point. If you have any kind of like normal size bench, he's dust.
He's just, he's been injured, right? So I don't even know if you can. Yeah, I think he's droppable. You're not going to get anything for him. What's going on, Jamie? See you over there in the chat. So you think DPJ carves out a role? Is he just replacing Marvin Jones?
I would lean towards I would lean towards that he's replacing Marvin Jones. I still have hope for Jamison Williams. There's some small hope that he's all right, but I do think maybe they just wanted another receiver who can play on the outside rather than just having just Jamison Williams. I don't think they trust him that much by any means.
Listen, I was pretty high on Jamison Williams. You can't fault him for the injury, and I get that. It is, injuries happen. But you were out for the whole year, and it seems like he's still having issues learning whatever the playbook is. And it's Dan Campbell. I know it's not Dan Campbell that's running the offense, but it's a Dan Campbell-led team. It can't be that hard to learn how to bite kneecaps. It just can't.
That's like page one of their playbook. It's just like an infographic.
So my hopes for Jamison Williams are pretty high, or were pretty high. I've tempered them down a little bit just because I think it's a 7 round, it's a 9 round. It's a 7 round, it's a 9 round. There is nothing in between.
And then it's a drop.
On the 7s and 9s. But yes, yeah, okay. Yeah. Brian, stock down for me.
Well, my stock down. His coach gets fired in the middle of the night. His general manager gets fired in the middle of the night. His receiving yards get dropped on Monday night and also on Sunday afternoons. It's Devontae Adams. 14 catches over the last 4 games, 7 of those in one game for barely over 100 yards and no touchdowns. So I'm not telling you to drop Devontae Adams like the Raiders dropped the entire organization, but, take it for what it's worth.
Brian, he's still a wide receiver 13 on the year. I understand, he's getting peppered with targets still. Okay, granted, they're not targets that are catchable, so I don't even know why they're considered targets, but he's going to be a rookie quarterback coming in. Do you feel like this Raiders intern coaching staff, do you feel like they come in and try to say, you know what, screw it, we're going to run the damn ball?
It's possible. I guess I wish they had more than Josh Jacobs and that line to run the damn ball, but yeah,
they've got Amir Abdullah, they've got Zamir White. To
Brian's point though, like the rushing efficiency for the Raiders has been terrible, like brutally bad, one of the worst in the league. So,
but that's some of my question on the Raiders as well. I mean, when you look at compare it to, last year. I know 340 attempts for Josh Jacobs is probably a little outrageous on a yearly basis, but he got 19 attempts in week 1. Then it went to 9, 17, 17, 20, 11, and 15 last week. I just feel like they're not even given getting the chance. And I'm like, not just Josh Jacobs, but it's the whole running back room. Now, is that an offensive line thing or is that a coaching staff thing?
Both.
Yeah.
I have concerns about both. Yeah. I don't think firing your entire staff fixes that offensive line.
And Brian, it wasn't at midnight. It was at 2 a.m.
Exactly. So, yeah. So it's, that the Raiders organization right now is just a screwed up organization. So, yeah, I mean, who's to say what approach they'll take, but it's not a good football team.
In comes Marshawn Lynch as the head coach. Okay, Josh has one for us. Which trade do you like more in a 20-man PPR? Jacoby and Demario Douglas for DK. That's number 1. Number 2 is Aaron Jones, Rondale Moore for Josh Jacobs. His roster is currently Lamar, JT, Aaron Jones, Tyreek, Christian Kirk, Kittle, and Jacoby in his flex. So let's start with you, Brian.
That's a tough one. I'm not used to playing in 20-man leagues, but seems like to me that the Josh Jacobs trade might be the better one. If we're talking about needing a running back, perhaps I guess it could also be considered positional scarcity and need. I mean, if I was in need of a running back, certainly Jacobs would be my pick.
You with the same thing there?
I think I would do the first one. I like concerns about Jacoby with a rookie quarterback. I like Demario Douglas, but there's no guarantees that he ends up being fantastic, especially on the Patriots offense too. And I really like DK Metcalf. So I think that's a really nice improvement from moving from Jacoby to DK, and you're just giving up Jacoby and then a bench asset. So I would do the first one.
And I'll be the tiebreaker, and it is number 2 for me because I would rather have JT and Josh Jacobs in my backfield currently, giving up a bench piece in Rondale Moore to go get Josh Jacobs, basically, because you're just swapping out the starting running back and getting your extended bench pieces going away. Because I do like what is happening in New England with Demario Douglas. What's when you look at what his snap share is from week 2 on, it has progressively gone this way, and his targets have progressively gone this way.
He's first on the team last week.
Everything's now. Josh has another question for you, and I'm one that I'm going to say no to this second question because of what I just said about Demario Douglas. Would you do both of them, Steven?
I guess I'm a little lower on Josh Jacobs than you both are. I would do both. I like Josh Jacobs more than I like Aaron Jones and Rondale Moore. So I guess the answer is yes, I would do both. But I do kind of like the first one.
So you would be getting rid of Aaron Jones, plugging in
Josh
Jacobs,
and then get rid of Jacoby.
You'd be getting rid of Jacoby and plugging in DK in there. To me, it's a 20-man league, right? And when you do that, depleting your bench that much really, really hurts you. Just my opinion.
It does, but your odds of winning that 20-man league are already low. I feel like trying to improve your starting roster, you're kind of going to need a really solid starting roster in order to win that league. So I feel like I'm willing to take the risk because my odds are already low to win anyway, and really try to build the best starting roster I can.
Brian, would you do both?
That's a tough call. I think I'm with you, Gator. I would probably just do the Jacobs one. But the one real thing I'd like to know, and I think I would know the answer, is there, in terms of roster requirements, are all of them flex positions, or do we have a mandatory 1 starting running back, 2 starting running backs? Because if it's 2, then you've got to do the Jacobs piece. But that's a lot of starting running backs in a 20-man league.
My other issue is, understand DK's already had his bye week, but Josh Jacobs still has a bye week coming. I would want to make sure that you're covered with the running back position there. when it comes to that week 13 bye week, Josh. All right, let's move on. Enough about the rest of the NFL. We can talk about those guys later. Let's dive into tonight's game. It is Thursday night football. It is the Tennessee Titans versus Brian's Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers are favored by 3. Interesting.
It
Over
go
under
up,
is
too.
37. I'm sorry, what was that? Yep.
I said, here we go, Steve.
Brian got the karaoke going
Singing the
on in the
fight song.
background. Get the lights popping. Get the what's the disco ball going? Got it going.
Oh yeah, exactly.
All right, so the over under is 37. Brian, how do you see this game playing out tonight?
Well, what I'm looking at from my perspective, the Titans are actually pretty good against the run. I mean, first of all, do you want me to give a score now? Or you want to do that later?
This is your show. This is all about Brian's Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay. Well, Steelers. I see the Steelers winning 23-20. But what I really see in terms of a game plan is the Titans are pretty good stopping the run. So I don't see a huge game from Najee or Jalen Warren. But the Titans, both the Titans and Steelers are pretty bad protecting the pass. So I see the receivers being on both sides potentially being good plays, good fantasy plays. But the reality of it is, at home, TJ Watt's likely to get unleashed. And with the rookie quarterback, I see a few mistakes being made. And like I said, I'm going out on a short limb. I don't see 3 DeAndre Hopkins touchdowns.
What?
Won't happen.
Why do you come on to the Gambit? This is the Dynasty Gambit. This isn't, he ain't gonna do show.
5 touchdowns. Call it.
I'm not doing that either. This isn't lose your house show either. Steve, how do you see this game playing out?
I think it's probably pretty similar. Yeah, I think Brian's points are all valid. If I had to guess a score, I'd probably say 21-17 Steelers. A small Steelers win, but I think it is a little tough to predict for the Titans offense. Like we have on the season as a whole, they've been a tick above average, both running the ball and passing, but you can kind of throw out those seasonal stats for the Titans offense, at least when they're passing, because we have Will Levis tonight instead of Tannehill. They were really it's just 1 week, but they're really run heavy last week. And a lot of play action usage. I think we see that again tonight for the Titans offense. The Steelers also tend to be run heavy, but they are at least willing to change if they're up against a good matchup. And I think tonight that would be like that could happen tonight. So maybe a little bit more neutral pass rate for the Steelers, run heavy for the Titans. But I think to Jamie's comment, it's going to be kind of a slow pace game too. So that'd be my best bet.
I will add one more thing while I'm thinking about it. So Hopkins did have 3 touchdowns, but he only had 1 other reception besides the 3 touchdowns for a total of 4. So it's not like he had 10 catches for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was
because they just didn't
4
pass
catches. So
for 128 yards.
Yeah, I don't anticipate he's going to average 30 plus yards, 32 yards a catch.
Well, who's going to cover him? Because no Mika Fitzpatrick tonight.
Yeah,
I'm not great on the defensive side and specific players, but Steelers find a way to play a lot of man
coverage too. So the Steelers are one of the heaviest man coverage pass defenses. So I'm going to guess Joey Porter Jr. That's a guess. That'd be my guess of who's mostly covering him.
It's gonna be a rough night. If they listen, I get 100% your TJ Watt take there because I agree they just let him go. Just go be TJ Watt. But at the same time, I could see Vrabel going, okay, you did it last week against Atlanta. Go do it again. I'm not by no means am I saying he's going to. But this is Will Levis's time to go, hey, you want this job? Show me that I'm not going to try to tank the rest of the year.
As the Gator football fan, you remember last year in the SEC, heat him up a little bit. He's smoldering hot in regards to melting like cheap.
He's
flannel.
Wax. He's wax. He's solid as long as the weather's cool. As soon as it gets warm,
exactly,
he's wet and dripping. Brian, let's get on to the injury report for tonight. Who is out, Brian? Who's out tonight?
Well, that's kind of the amazing thing. I mean, unless I missed something out there, the only real out tonight is Ryan Tannehill. He's still got the ankle injury, so obviously Levis is starting. But then you got players that were kind of questionable. And you had you had not Deontay, but you had DeAndre. He was questionable was going to play. Of course, Pickett was questionable going to play. And then who was the defensive player? Cam Hayward was questionable going to play. Yeah. So not a lot that I'm aware of.
And this is, they didn't put Ryan Tannehill on the IR. But Steve, if and by no means am I saying that he's going to do what he did last week, but if he somehow, if Levis somehow, let's say he throws 2 touchdowns, 210 yards, 225 yards, doesn't turn the ball over, and they pull out a W, is Tannehill done in Tennessee?
Yeah, I think so. I think you would have to keep playing him. If he looks good, there's really no reason to bring Tannehill back if you feel any way optimistic about how Will Levis is playing. So I think you got to keep. I think they would keep playing him.
Brian, you agree with that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there was talk all offseason about him being gone anyway. So all they were looking for is an opportunity, and if Levis plays good and back-to-back games, then,
don't you?
Yeah, he's gone.
Mean, do you feel bad at all? I mean, for your hometown team, Tennessee. Not necessarily your team, but your home state team, I guess. Don't you feel bad for them that they missed out on probably a sell window that they could have, they could have traded him, and now they're just going to have to eat the end of this contract?
Yeah, I guess that's the NFL. I try to be empathetic to everybody, but it's the NFL. But no, it is unfortunate actually. Because he got injured right before the trade deadline. Now, in the last week, you've had 4 or 5 quarterbacks that have now been benched and are in the process of being benched and or injured. So, yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of opportunity there if you hadn't gotten injured. So.
Let's get into the news and notes tonight. There, Steven, let's go.
So. The graph you're looking at on the screen, so it's for quarterbacks just for this season. The x-axis is how quickly the quarterback throws the ball after it's snapped. It's in seconds. And the y-axis is their average pass depth, their average number of air yards per pass attempt. And so I have little text blocks in each one of the quadrants too. Why I'm showing this graph tonight is if you look all the way at the top of your screen, that's where Will Levis is. He is pacing the field, and it's just one game, but pacing the field in air yards per pass attempt. So I think his goal is he's got a cannon, is to throw the ball past you. That's really what he wants to do. And I'm really curious. I'm sure we'll see that again tonight, especially on play action. Just how successful is he? He was really successful last week. Those are pretty low probability throws in general, though. So concern there. That's why I think it's really tough, at least for me, to predict his passing yards for tonight. If he hits on those, then I think the over is easily in reach. But if he misses, then it could be really bad. So just kind of crazy in one game that he's just yards above Jordan Love, who is the next highest here in air yards per pass attempt. So
yeah, that seems. I mean, I again, like you brought up, it's one game, but then if you look at it. You also have Deshaun Watson in that same area. Jalen Hurts is in there. CJ Stroud is in there. But Will Levis pacing the field, as you so called it, is interesting. Where do you not want to be? You want to not be in the bottom right.
Which is surprising because Patrick Mahomes is there. So it's, obviously there's Patrick Mahomes is great. But yeah, ideally you're not in the bottom right. I think ideally you would want to be in the top left. There's not a lot of quarterbacks there. Tua has, over the course of the season, dropped a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's been especially impressive about the Dolphins offense all season is he has both an incredibly fast time to throw and a pretty deep pass. And I think that's because he's got all-world speedsters as his wide receivers. That's good. That's going to help. But I think ideally you would want to be around where Tua is. An incredibly fast throw. You avoid pressure that way, and then you have a pretty deep pass too. But I think ideally you're not in the bottom right.
I just want to point out real quick while I have a chance that Baker Mayfield is in the a good spot there. So
he is. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. Along with, I was the most surprised, I think, of anybody, of Sam Howell. How is he throwing that quickly and taking as many sacks as he's taking? That is impressive. I don't know how he's doing that. Yeah,
he's gonna have to do it a lot more, I think, over the next few weeks. But he was, two games against the Eagles already, so he's already faced that front five or front seven 2 times. That he's not gonna have to face him again. We shall see if he stays up there in that. Brock Purdy's right there as well, which is kind of cool.
Which he's been playing great before he got hurt.
Yep. All right, Brian, what are you looking at for this week? News and notes.
Well, in terms of my news and notes, I wanted to look at it a little bit in regards to. First of all, I wanted to describe what fantasy points against are. Basically, each team in the NFL, and I do a lot of this for my DFS shows on Friday night. But each team is given against the 4 major positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight number of fantasy points per game to opposing players in each of those 4 skill positions. And in this particular game, both teams are really good against playing against tight ends. So I don't really expect a lot. Not that the names are big anyway, but Owonkwo and Darnell Washington, I don't really anticipate much of games from them. When it comes to running backs, the Titans are actually really good against the run, while the Steelers, unfortunately, give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So I'm looking for a big game from Derrick Henry. Probably looking about 20 carries or so, I would think. Would not shock me. And last week, Tajay Spears had 6 total touches. I expect that number to go up a little bit, maybe to more like 10. And then both teams are generous to opposing wide receivers, 26 and 28. So I could see an opportunity for both DeAndre Hopkins and all of the Steelers receivers to do well. And last but not least, in regards to quarterbacks, neither one of them, they're both middle of the pack. The Titans give up the 18th most, and then the Steelers give up the 19th most. So that's kind of where they're ranking. And so when I'm setting my DFS lineup today, I thought that the most position was Derrick Henry for sure.
You brought up Darnell Washington. His name may not be that big, but his hands are. That's number 1. Number 2 is, I think, the Cam Hayward's brother, is actually going to be the starting tight end with Pat Freiermuth being out, unless I missed something that was said. But I think it's going to be Connor Hayward. That's going to be and he's actually received a lot of targets over the last few weeks. He got 7 of them last week. So, Kyle Sinra in the chat. How are you tonight, sir? Appreciate you dropping in. Jamie's got a question here, and I don't know. I think you need to stop using trade calculators. Single quarterback league. I'm in first place, trying to unload Deshaun Watson and acquire Tua. What should I try to add? Question is my second. The calculators say my third is an even trade. Stop using trade calculators. That's just a gauge, because nobody in their right mind wants Deshaun Watson right now, and you're not trading Deshaun Watson without a first to go get Tua.
Yeah, I would agree there. I don't think the other person is excited to acquire Deshaun Watson, and then in a single quarterback league too. Maybe if it's super flex, that'd be a little bit more valuable, but it depends. I mean,
well, let me ask it this way, because he's saying he's in first place right now. So now that's a 112 or a 212.
yeah,
It's the back end.
yeah.
Nobody
back end is
wants
fine.
that and Deshaun Watson.
Yeah,
So you're gonna have to overpay.
Yeah.
To go get it.
Yeah. And you probably should, if you're in first place, go get a starting quarterback and try to win this season.
Yeah. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I use calculators too, but that one seems a little bit broken. I mean, not to be mean, but unless somebody hasn't been watching football, I can't imagine anything but a first, maybe even two first, getting to be honest.
I feel like a trade's going to be bad when the first message has a trade calculator screenshot. You're like, oh, can't wait to see this one.
Nope. I don't even look. I learned a while back. If you're gonna send me a screenshot of a trade calculator, I could care less. I really don't even look at the trade.
I think it's okay as a starting point.
It's a starting point, but if you're gonna send me the screenshot,
that means you're trying to snake one over on that.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is even if he wasn't hurt, you'd have to probably trade it first. But I mean, heck, the guy hadn't played in like 2 or 3 weeks. So what value does John have right now besides maybe, outside of football? I don't know.
But that's the point, Jamie, is you're saying trade analyzers are good to see where others have players valued. The problem is there's no way in hell that anybody has Tua valued as a third, because Deshaun Watson is a throw-in at this point.
Yeah.
You don't even know if he's going to play.
His most recent comment there is interesting, though. They came to try to get Watson. I mean, that's a yes.
Okay, well then send him the third, and if you get it, then you stole the guy.
Exactly.
And then this is why trade calculators don't work, is because when it rains, you don't get solar. The trade calculator is solar powered.
The
calculator is only as good as the guy who puts the information in, unfortunately, and
they are usually a black box. You don't know when they're updated. You don't know what they're basing it off of.
That's what I'm thinking too. I mean,
Jamie, I'm just giving Jamie a hard time because I know he's using it as a guide, to start the conversation, or to not get not to get overdone, right? So I know where Jamie's coming from, but the adding that in there is just, I don't know. I hate it when somebody brings up the trade calculator or analyzer, because the analyzer is one thing, but the trade calculator is one that it depends on which site you go to. If you go to DLF, or if you go to, Fantasy Pros, or if you go to somewhere else, those numbers are not equal nowhere across the board.
But if you think go ahead, Brian.
Realistically, this is like the stock market. I mean, if you sell low, other than possibly upsetting the other individual by him having to hit the delete button, you can start anywhere you want to, theoretically. Why not?
Yeah, that was the comment I was going to say too, was like, if you think it's even possible to get it done with a third, try.
Yeah. And with you saying that the guy is interested in Watson,
that
and is offering Tua in the trade, throw him the third, let him move you to a second.
Exactly. That's what you always do.
Yeah. But if I took it completely the other way, as if Jamie was going out and trying to find this trade. So yeah, I would definitely go that route. All right. One player from tonight to keep your eye on, or for the fantasy player to keep their eye on. Brian, I'll let you start this one off. Well, actually, you know what? Sorry, Brian. I'm because I just looked at the way this is set up. I'm gonna let Steven start this off, because I know you have a not gonna call it a combative, but a good rebuttal to some of Steve's comments on here.
Yeah, I think for me, the player to watch, I mean, for the Titans, we kind of already talked about him a lot, but it's Will Levis. I mean, I think he dictates both how you're feeling about him, but all of these skill players on the Titans potentially for the rest of the season. And it's just such a big game for him. He looks really good in his first week of action. Even some of the advanced stats looked pretty good. His completion percentage over expectation was like 7.5. That's pretty strong. But a lot of that was dependent on 4 throws. It's just a really, really small sample size. And then the success rate of the offense in general wasn't that great last week either. So what do we see tonight? Can he improve that success rate? Does he keep hitting on those deep shots? I think we'll get some more data tonight, basically. I'm excited to get a slightly larger sample size.
Yeah, I truly am wondering how much pressure that TJ Watt, that Highsmith can actually put onto Will Levis and that offensive line to make up the difference for Mika Fitzpatrick not being there in coverage. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm just worried about that front line for Tennessee holding up against what should be a pretty good defensive line.
We saw he got the ball out for how deep his average pass depth was. He got the ball out on an average rate. So when you adjust it for the depth of target, he was getting it out there pretty quickly.
Well, it's kind of illegal to have a howitzer on your shoulder, but that's what he's got.
Exactly. They're using him, and they're tons of play action. A lot of his successful throws last week was play action. So I think you're seeing a ton of run, a lot of Derrick Henry, and then play action passes. And a lot of them are based off of last week's anything. And we know about the talent of the quarterback. I think he's going to be tossing them deep. And I think the outcome of the game is dependent on, are those relatively low probability throws, do they hit or do they not hit?
Brian, one player to keep an eye on tonight.
Well, I had one for each team. Kenny Pickett's got to be my Steeler because he was, he has left the game midway last week, and by yesterday he was practicing in full. So I'm assuming he's healthy. I think it's one of his better matchups through 8 games. So I'm really looking forward to his opportunity. And like I was mentioning DFS a minute ago, I went with him, but I also went with the triple stack of Deontay, George Pickens, and then for cheap, I went with Calvin Austin. So I'm really liking the Steelers passing game here. And then from the Titans, I'm actually looking at kind of curious what Tyjae Spears is going to do. He played on 44% of snaps last week, 6 total touches. And like I said, the best opportunity to beat Pittsburgh is through the running back. So I think he'll be more involved, and Levis will be less involved because he'll be on his back a lot.
Well, quick question for you, because you say you're excited to see this passing game, or I don't know what your exact words were there. This passing game is going to be good, but 235 yards is the most yards that the Steelers have had through the air all year long, and that was in week 3 versus Vegas. Kenny Pickett starting. He's hit 230, 2 times? 3 times total? But 235 is the max.
Yeah, he'll hit 250 plus today.
Okay.
I like it.
Listen, it's the gambit, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
It's sort of Steve, like a weak passing offense versus a weak passing defense. Like, which one gives?
Steve, I know you had one more that you wanted to bring up as well.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about Deontay Johnson. I still think he's the best wide receiver on the Steelers. I think he's still better than George Pickens. He just gets open at such an elite rate, and you saw that last week where he had 14 targets to Pickens 5. I still think he's the first read option. I think he gets open ridiculously quickly. And then the Titans passing defense is nothing to write home about. I think they're 7th worst efficiency on the season. And that's before they traded their best safety, which probably isn't going to help there either. So I don't love Kenny Pickett. I do really like Deontay Johnson. That's the guy I'm most confident about on the Steelers offense in general. So excited to see Deontay tonight.
Yeah, Jamie says he wants to keep an eye on Burks to see if he gets more than 50% snap share and hopefully gets a target.
At least a target.
Just at least a target. He also wants to see the targets. He also wants to see the targets for Deontay and Pickens to see if it switches back into Deontay's favor.
It's interesting
So
because it did
I
last week. It was heavy Deontay, but the week before Deontay's first week back, it was more heavy on Pickens. So I still think it's going to be Deontay.
I was just looking up those numbers because I could have sworn that I saw the same thing, that it was all Deontay last week with, Mitch Trubisky. But I mean, they had that rapport, 2 years ago or last year, whatever it was, where he was just, but the problem was he couldn't get him in the end zone. So that is what it is. All right, fellas, it is time for Brian's favorite segment. It is time for the Chrome Dome Parlay of the night. Brian, do you want to go first tonight? We're talking about the Tennessee Titans, Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers favored by 3, over under of 37. Are you up for going first?
Definitely my favorite part. So, first of all, like you said, the over under is 37. My final prediction is 23-20 Steelers. So, to me, it'll go over, obviously. We've already talked about Kenny Pickett. I think tonight is his best game in 2 years. A lot of it has been lack of opportunity. He hasn't thrown the ball around the yard. So, unlike some other younger quarterbacks that have been given the opportunity, tonight seems like a night that could have happened. So, going over 216 in terms of passing yards. Let's see what else do I have on here. I've got I've got Derrick Henry going over 72 yards rushing. And then the last but not least part, I've got DeAndre Hopkins in an upset going under 54.5 yards receiving, and Deontay Johnson going over 56.5 yards receiving. So that's my pick 5 parlay.
There's a spicy piece in there that you just went really quickly over, and that was a D-Hop under 54.5. That's pretty damn spicy. And then, of course, you have to throw in the don't take this the wrong way, the homer pick of Deontay over. Because I listen, I say don't take it the wrong way because I do believe he's going to go over 56.5 as well. But because you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I am not surprised that you have him on your parlay. The other side of that parlay, the other piece of that parlay I do want to highlight is Kenny Pickett over 216.5. Outside of last week where he only played 42% of the snaps before he got pulled, he's only had one game where he hasn't hit that number.
And let's be polite to him now. He wasn't pulled. He was injured, so he had to be pulled. He unlike Desmond Ridder and some of these that just sucked last week, he actually got hurt. That's important.
What did he? I missed the game. Did he miss? Did he lose one of his gloves? What happened?
Yeah, exactly. He hurt a wrist somehow. I don't know how. I'm kind of surprised he's playing, to be honest. But he'll be good to go this week, apparently.
Just to recap Brian's Chrome Dome parlay picks of the night. It is Pickett over 216.5 passing, Henry over 72.5 rushing, Hopkins under 54.5 receiving, Deontay over 56.5 receiving. All right, Steven, you ready for yours?
Yeah, more of a reluctant yes.
More of a reluctant. Here we go. Let's go, baby.
So I feel pretty good about the first one. Kenny Pickett under half a pick on underdog. My model has about 40% chance of him throwing interceptions, so you get a little bit of an edge there on that one. I feel okay. It's one of the lower ones in the week. I like Deontay over 56.5, just like Brian. Derrick Henry over, it was 70.5 when I got it. I think it's moved up a little bit since then. I also took Tajay. I think it's going to be a lot of running. That's my bet. I took Tajay over 19.5. I think that's also moved up a little bit. And then the one that I think will happen, but I'm not excited to put actual U.S. currency on it, Allen Robinson over 1.5 receptions. I think he's beat that every week but one, I want to say. I think he's had at least 2 receptions. I want to say last week was just 1. I might be wrong.
You're wrong. There's actually 3 weeks where he's only gotten 1 or less.
So I think I might have missed the weeks where he had 0.
Yeah, last week was the week he had 0. He had 1 target, 0 receptions.
I think the line still should be a bit closer to 2.5 rather than 1.5.
And you wouldn't touch it. You would not touch the over on that.
I wouldn't touch 2.5, but 1.5, I think he can get 2 catches. This is betting that the Steelers, who have been run heavy on the season, but their pass rate over expectation has been pretty high variance, or at least above average variance. So I think they are willing to pass a bit more if the situation's right. And I think when else is a situation better than tonight? Titans pass defense is pretty bad. So it's a bet that the Steelers pass a little bit more than they usually do. And I think that makes sense. So
I want to throw this out there to both y'all. I talked about the DFS piece, and you've got basically a similar price, Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin. Which side are we on amongst those two?
Well, let me see. Because on Underdog, I didn't see a Calvin Austin bet, and maybe they've added it since then. But I only saw at the time, at least, it was just Allen Robinson. But I am curious. Based off that, I guess my initial guess would be, I think it's pretty close.
Is it?
I'd
have to. I'm just going to go with Austin. I'm going to say it's Austin.
I think the talent edge is for Austin at this point in their careers. The speed is for Austin too. I think the volume maybe is a little bit more for Allen Robinson, and that's why I would skew. But it's so close. I don't know. I don't feel great about either of them.
All right. To recap, we have Kenny Pickett under half an interception. Deontay Johnson over 56.5. Derrick Henry over 70.5 rushing. Tajay Spears over 19.5 rushing. And Allen Robinson over 1.5 receptions. So I did it this way because unfortunately, I can see the sports book for DK. Like Steven, I cannot bet that sports book. So I went ahead and just built 2. And I went a quick 3-legger for DK's side. Will Levis over 216.5. I just don't see how he doesn't hit at least 220. Like Steve, I just think it's going to be a huge run game. I'm not comfortable touching the number of 70.5 or 72.5.
Big number.
With the King. I know he's going to get the volume that he should be there, but I did like the 21.5 that they were giving you with Tajay Spears. I do think that's an over. And then the one that I think is a little, maybe I may have to wait till the end of the game, the fourth quarter, maybe that Pittsburgh's down by a couple, maybe, a couple points, maybe a score, trying to get in the field goal range. And that's going to be Najee Harris getting 9.5 receiving yards. They waited till last week to actually get him in the receiving game to the end of the game. Now that was with Mitchell Trubisky. But I think you could see that same kind of thing if the game script runs very similar to what it did last week, trying to get Najee involved at the end, getting him 9.5 receiving yards. Look, they could do that. He could do it on one play in the first quarter as well, but just the way they don't involve him for some reason in the passing game until the very end of the game. So the DK is going to be Levis over 216.5, Tajay Spears over 21.5. Najee Harris over 9.5 receiving yards. So then I went over to Underdog, this is an actual one that I did bet it. And I try to make sure that I actually bet these when I do put these up here with Underdog. And I actually, was able to take some of the legs that I put into the DK into this one. Will Levis over 201.5.
I feel a lot better about 201.5 than
right.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy smokes. So, again, Tajay Spears, 21.5 rushing, Najee Harris, 9.5 receiving. This is where I kind of had to go off script a little bit. I went with DeAndre Hopkins over 4 receptions total. I just looking at what he did last week with Will Levis, I think the opportunity is going to be there. Will he catch all of them? Hopefully he does. For me, we'll see. The other one was, like you guys are thinking this is going to be a pass game and it's going to be a Deontay, not a Pickens game, or it is going to be 3 first downs. That's all I need. Over 3 first downs for Deontay Johnson. If you guys are correct in saying he's going to get 56.5 receiving yards, I should have no issue getting 4 first downs from Deontay Johnson. Guys disagree with any of those?
No.
No, they all look good to me.
All right. So last week, I don't have, or 2 weeks ago, we weren't here last week. I don't have all the numbers. I know Brian brought it up in our chat before the this week started. I wonder, how did we do 2 weeks ago, Brian?
Honestly, I don't remember 2 weeks ago. That's a long time for an old man. I remember last week better.
I do remember you hit at least 4 of 5. Steven, I hit 3 of 5. But Steven went ahead and went 4 for 4.
Wow.
So props to Steven, just hammering
Honestly,
everything.
These last 2 weeks have been the best 2 weeks I've ever had betting. It's been really good. The interception model has been killing it. It was right. The 4 that I put in my article last week, all 4 hit for the interceptions. And then overall, the most conviction that it had, it was 75% right for all of the other players that were at least 10% above or below the 50% margin. So interception model's doing great. Bryce Young under, that's my tip for the rest of the slate. I know I don't feel amazing about it, but I think you can bet that on underdog. Bryce Young under. There's a NBA free square. I did the NBA free square and then Bryce Young under $10 to win 30. So
What was the under though? What was it? Under
on half a pick. So pretty much for the interception lines.
So we just
except for that one Will Levis one tonight that we talked about before the show, where they don't take the Will Levis over 1.5 picks. I don't recommend it.
No, I don't recommend it because I just don't see it happen. I mean, it gives you 2 times, but it's still.
He is one of the higher percentages from the model of throwing a pick, but still, it's not the odds of having to hit throwing over 2 unlikely, but possible.
We talked about this pre-show, and I do think there is a pick tonight, but I don't think he throws 2.
I would agree there. I think it's more likely than not that he throws a pick, but 2 is hard to bet.
All right, Brian, we're going to get out of here. Tell the good people where they can find you and what you are working on.
You can always find me at VandyGrad92 on X. Tomorrow night, I got DFS Deep Dive, the show for Frequency State Network. And I'm also part of their live pregame show on Sunday mornings. And Gator, this is not really an apology towards you or anything about teasing you and Anthony Richardson about losing to Vanderbilt in football last year. But I will like us to remember that one Mr. Will Levis also lost to Vanderbilt. So so just keep that in mind when watching the game tonight and when he's on his back and Pittsburgh wins.
So you are lumping me in. You're lumping me, Anthony Richardson, and all of my Gator friends into Will Levis, Kentucky, Penn State, and Sean Clifford.
Sean Clifford.
Yep, exactly.
That's what you just did. Brian, you're such a great guy. I so much appreciate you. Steve, you talked about your article. Where can the people go read it? And what do you got? What else are you working on this coming week?
Yeah, so goingfor2.com. You read the article. Tons of graphs like the one that we showed earlier. If you really like graphs, check out the article. And then at the very end, I've been putting my interception model picks. And like I said, last week did really great. Best week of the season so far for the interception model. So
is that something that people can find, or is that something you're like in beta with, or is that something that you can actually?
I've been putting the results, like the ones that I'm actually think that you should probably take a look at the end of the article each week. So they're there. I think moving forward, I can put the percentages too that the model thinks.
While you are over there checking out Steven's article and checking out who is guaranteed to throw an interception that week, also go ahead and at the very bottom, the right-hand corner, hit that Going for 2 Discord. Jump in, join us over there. Make sure you hit that like. Make sure you hit that subscribe. Join. We got shows going 7 nights a week. Kyle Sinra right here in the chat. I wonder if the interception model will keep picking up.
I like the pig
I
pun.
see what you did there. But you can see Kyle on Monday nights as they get ready pre-gaming for the Monday night show. On Tuesday night, there are 2 shows. You're keeping, you've got the cheat sheet at 9, and you've got D and golly, what is that show called on Tuesdays? I know you watch it. Kyle's in the chat, so he'll tell me what Tuesday is. Wednesday is the armchair quarterback. Thursday, you have us. Friday, you have the DFS guys. Saturday night 5 on Saturday. And then Sunday, of course, there is the pregame show. Speak On It is the name of the channel, or the name of the show over there on Tuesday nights at 7:30, I do believe. Make sure you're checking out everything that the fantasy that the Going for Two network has going on. The website, the Discord. It is free, by the way. We have about 4,000 people in there, and it's just constantly growing. So come join us over there. Hang out with us. Hit that like. Hit that subscribe. And until next week, fellas, we out.
Yeah.